just heard a seagull. It reminds me we're not far from the sea. I very much like being at the sea. I had a real awareness when I was in Brighton, England, last April 2017, where I felt I was experiencing an ocean of sadness and there was no one to blame. But I've always felt that the sea is a place that comes to me with wisdom. And the last piece of wisdom that the sea offered me, if the English Channel counts as the sea, or La Manche, as the French call it, it was about life being an ocean of sadness and there was nobody to blame. I say that with a smile on my face because I don't feel it deeply inside me today, but it was a real awareness. And I've had lots of insights, I suppose, coming to me from the sea, looking at the sea, feeling its magnitude and its scope. I was really happy and deeply moved to scatter my father's ashes at Brighton Beach, Christchurch, New Zealand, in, I think it was 2013. We waited 3 years to do it. In the meanwhile, he sat on my sister's window ledge in an urn. And it was in January, and my mother, my sister and I went down to Brighton Beach, New Zealand. And it was sunset, and it was a magnificent day. It was just so beautiful and calm and warm. And we had a big bag full of ashes stuffed into my backpack. You'd be surprised how many ashes there are to a human body. Amazing. And we very surreptitiously had divided the ashes up into plastic bags. We snuck down to the beach when all the surfers were out. And we were trying sort of surreptitiously, not to look too obvious, emptying plastic bags of ashes into the sea. My dad would have loved that. He would have really enjoyed it. He said, "Oh, gold. Look at the Sheilas down there emptying out the bloody bags into the sea." Yeah, he would have had a good chuckle about that. I don't know whether that was an insight or not, but it was a really beautiful moment down at the beach. And that's it. He's gone. An end. The very last workshop that I did with David Grove was in 2007. David Grove was a New Zealand therapist, about the same age as me, went to the same university even, Christchurch, New Zealand. But I met him in a garden in Normandy, and he's the inventor of clean language. And he did a workshop in Normandy for 3 days in November each year, and I attended his workshops for about 6 or 7 years. And in the very last workshop, I decided to go for the big one. I mean, when somebody says, so what would you like to have happen? Great, clean question. I wrote down, I wasn't going to tell anybody what it was, but I wrote down, I want to know God. So going for the big one. But my God, it was an amazing 3 days. And it sort of said something to me about, be careful what you ask for. You're likely to get it. And I really, really, really did have an extraordinary experience. David put me on a gyroscope, a what? A whirligig, a what? A huge contraption that he'd built that the body was strapped into, and it enabled him to tip the body in multiple directions. And in each direction, there was new information. And holding that objective in my mind, I want to know God, without having evoked that in any way whatsoever. First of all, David left me outside after 11 o'clock at night on my own in the dark in a Normandy November night, so cold. And the first thing I experienced from that was being alone, left in the dark, and seeing life going on in a small room just to my left, where there were people. It was like being dead and being in a limbo and watching people alive and in light, and me cold and in the dark. And it was okay. How strange. And then after some time, David came out and started tipping me. First of all, downwards, and then to the right, to the left, upwards, etc. And I moved through a series of experiences, and the very first experience was one of deep anxiety, and from there moving to being stuck, not being able to find it, whatever it was, and sobbing my heart out. I guess I was in a very young state, I assume that, but being so terribly, I wasn't afraid, but I was so terribly, terribly lost. And then I was tipped in another direction, and I felt a certain calmness come over me. And then I was tipped up to my left and up towards a star. And that star was so, so beautiful. It was your leaping fish, if you wish. But this star, was it coming home? This star was so exquisitely beautiful. So beautiful. And you could not stay there. I could not stay there. And then David tipped me towards the garden table, but for some reason, after that experience, this table was the table, as if there were no other table in the whole world. This was the table. The table. And I'm laughing because David was a good New Zealander, and I looked upon him as my brother. And he looked at me as if I were his bossy older sister. And and when I was looking, I said, David, it's the table. And he was going, yeah, it's the table. Let's do it. It's the table. Yeah, it's the table. I mean, talk about insane. And then he says, Jesus, I better get you a cup of tea. So he trots off to get me a cup of tea, and I'm sort of, I've just seen God, and he goes off to make me a cup of tea. I mean, hello. Oh, gosh. What an amazing experience. So be careful what you ask for. You get it. And then he was dead. Everything has an end. But nothing can take away that experience. Nothing. I saw a salmon swimming upstream in New Zealand. And it reminded me of my very best school friend who had just died. I seem to be on death today for some reason. And fish. There was something truly magnificent about watching this salmon swim upstream. It's possible. That's what I'm doing, waiting to return. In the meantime, doing lots of really interesting things, waiting to return. Home. And I can elaborate on that and assume home as a place, but it's not. It's not really a place. It's just waiting to return home. I'm waiting to return home.